What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's a really interesting cultural shift going on right now behind the scenes at many huge entertainment empires like Sony, Disney, and Amazon. In this video, I'll cover how a Spider-Man spin-off show is rejecting female audiences and how a journalist got really angry about that. And Reacher soars to insane numbers, Madam Web plummets, and a Disney executive doubles down claiming they are dying cause fans are racist and more. It's a lot, I know, so let's keep this simple. To begin, let's look at Amazon Prime, which is the home of shows like Reacher, The Terminal List, and Bosch, which have all done incredibly well for the service, and for good reason. Shows like these mostly just deliver quality entertainment without talking down to the audience. And now these ratings are causing Amazon to pivot when it comes to one of their new shows, which is Silk Spider Society. In case you don't know, Amazon is currently developing a show surrounding the Spider-Man character Silk. Her real name is Cindy Moon, a young Korean girl who gets bit by the same spider as Peter Parker, develops similar powers, and goes out fighting crime. If you know me, I always find when comics just make duplicates of legacy characters to be boring as hell. Whether it's the infinite amount of spider people out there or how there's like 4 different Flashes over at DC on any given day, I've never really enjoyed the idea that there's multiple versions of a single character with similar powers. It's always come off as lazy to me, and it dilutes the originality of the primary character within these groups. Having like 20 people swinging around New York City shooting webs like Spider-Man is lame as hell in my opinion. And all it does is make Spider-Man himself seem less original or interesting when it seems like anyone can just become Spider-Man. So the existence of Silk to begin with kind of already makes me tired, and to be honest, I wouldn't really want to watch a show about Silk to begin with. Anyway, what once started as a rumor on certain sites like Bounding Into Comics actually got confirmed. And Silk Spider Society has officially fired all of its writers, and the series is being completely overhauled from the ground up again. Apparently, besides the showrunner and one producer, everyone else has been let go. And the story surrounding this sounds very similar to what happened with Daredevil Born Again, where Kevin Feige saw early episodes of that original show and hated it so much that he fired everyone. And now the show is completely being remade now, which is filming as we speak. Silk is basically having the same thing happening as well, but it gets more interesting. Seeing as how these reports are saying the show is not only getting remade completely, but Amazon's higher-ups are applying pressure to ensure Silk is aimed at male-watching audiences instead. This only confirms that prior to this, that Silk was very likely going to be a female-charged feminist superhero show, akin to the likes of Batwoman on the CW, and would have likely starred Cindy Moon as a bisexual liberal feminist with diverse friends only, and every man was either a villain or an idiot. And I don't need to tell you that this formula would have absolutely led to a garbage misfire and the show would have tanked. And that original version of Silk would have ended up just becoming cannon fodder for content creators to make fun of for a couple of weeks at best. And amidst this retooling, Amazon is also in the early stages to create a Spider-Man noir live-action show starring Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man. Which makes sense since he voices Noir in the Spider-Verse movies, but man, that's gonna be hilariously dope to see, I'm not gonna lie. As for why Amazon is pushing for Silk to be male-focused makes sense, considering many of Amazon's highest-rated shows, like The Terminal List, Jack Ryan, or Reacher, have performed exceptionally well, because they all feature strong, capable male characters in leading roles, and they obviously don't talk down to audiences. And clearly, Amazon is looking at the ratings of these shows, not to mention their misfires which embraced a feminist agenda like Rings of Power or Wheel of Time, and likely realize that when they cater to female-going audiences only, the ratings are but a mere fraction of those watched by male ones. And to the surprise of no one, shows like Reacher continue to soar. Look at this article from mid-January 2024, confirming that Reacher's first 2 seasons are eclipsing every single other piece of media across the entire industry with biblically huge numbers. Just between December 18th to December 24th, 2023, the show amassed over 1.18 billion minutes watched. That's more watch time than entire Netflix shows' minutes watched in a year. And Reacher is consistently getting numbers like that every single week. It even managed to outperform newer releases like Percy Jackson over at Disney+, My Life with the Walter Boys, and The Crown even. None of these shows, and many more, could even hold a candle to the mega masculine juggernaut that is Reacher starring Alan Ritchson. As for where Reacher goes in the future, Alan Ritchson was asked in an interview and said, "I can't say too much about season 3, but I will say there's a lot of classic Reacher stories which are just adventures that he gets sucked into in a big way. And we get to enjoy Reacher in a new world. It may not have anything to do with family, with his past, he's just living that adventure out." And that's kind of the direction that we've gone, and it seems to be really working. And I for one am hyped for season 3, as I would definitely like to see Reacher return more so to a solo adventure like season 1, instead of an ensemble cast like in season 2. But the point still stands that Reacher is, to put it simply, absolutely shitting all over the feminist woke agenda in record numbers. And it's so monumental that these feminist woke writers are being purged from places like Amazon with stuff like Silk Spider Society, and instead shows will now be male focused. This makes sense since Hollywood, like any other industry, follows trends. Like how Marvel did the whole MCU thing in a shared universe, and we saw a lot of other franchises attempting a similar shared universe, like remember the Dark Universe? Where Tom Cruise was in The Mummy, no? Yeah, that sucked ass, but you get the point, which is that a lot of studios have attempted and failed miserably to replicate what Marvel was doing. It's the same in games too. Remember back in the mid-2000s where every single game was a third-person shooter? And in the past 10 years, how there's been so many live service games or open world experiences. It's all trends is what I'm saying. And Reacher is the latest trend that studios like Amazon are realizing they need to replicate in order to ensure their shows have not only strong debuts, but consistently huge numbers for multiple weeks or even months at a time. But I would wager what Reacher is doing is not even a trend per se, it's more a return to form for entertainment in general. Of course, one writer over at the Mary Sue is pissed that Silk is going male over female with their article titled, "Amazon Silk Society is being retooled for a male skewing audience because apparently men don't have enough already." The writer then proves why this change is a good idea where they say this, "It's depressing and all too predictable that Amazon would want to gear this woman-led series toward a male audience. After all, their most successful content is male-driven series like The Boys, Reacher, and Bosch." Exactly, Mary Sue writer. How dare a corporation that is likely going to spend millions making something want their product to succeed to ensure more content using that IP gets made, and creating it for the biggest audience out there that is actually into superhero stuff on a pretty regular basis. That's crazy, if you're a feminist moron, that is. Silk could be a massive show, and there's nothing wrong making it for male audiences alongside any other property out there. The truth is that women don't really go out of their way to enjoy action movies or superhero stuff akin to how male audiences do. It's also why romantic comedies have mostly always been aimed at female audiences, because that's predominantly who will go watch that stuff. You don't see men complaining about it, so why are you crying here? Besides, we've seen in real time what happens when superhero stuff is made for female audiences. You end up with Miss Marvel, the lowest performing Disney Plus series ever, or The Marvels, which was the biggest bomb in Disney history. Or nonsense like Madam Web, which was so bad it's unlikely it'll even make $100 million worldwide at this point. Jesus. How much money, resources, time, and opportunities need to be wasted before Hollywood and these types of journalists realize that their wants and needs are never going to be a thing? Forcing a space primarily held by male audiences to be made for female ones was never going to work. It would be like making a romantic comedy for men. The only way that would work is if you made it about two girls making out the entire time. Otherwise, throw the whole movie away, because nobody, especially men, are gonna want to watch that nonsense. This Mary Sue writer continues by saying, "Are men really out here thirsting for more Spider content? Can't women just have one thing? Honestly, I blame Madam Web. Now it'll be years before we get another women-driven Spider film or series." If there's any truth out there, it's that there is not an audience problem. There is a quality of content issue instead. There are plenty of people out there willing to watch and engage with content as long as the things being made are worth their time and money. Madam Web, honestly, proves as well that an all-led female Spider-Man spin-off movie is not going to happen again for a while. But I personally don't think it's because it has women only in leading roles. I think the problem was simply that Madam Web was absolute dog water at best. After all, recently, The Hollywood Reporter had this article which states that based on their knowledge of the behind the scenes when it comes to Madam Web, Sony is scrambling and panicking due to how poorly this movie is doing. According to a theater executive, they said regarding Madam Web's box office performance, on Wednesday night, you could actually watch advanced purchase sales declining in real time as buyers were refunding their tickets. It really says something when you'd rather have Shazam 2 numbers. Another unnamed industry veteran in this article then said, "We're not going to see another Madam Web movie for another decade plus. It failed. Sony tried to make a movie that was a different type of superhero movie." Different type of superhero movie is definitely one way to put it, yeah, since Madam Web was barely even a movie to begin with. Nothing made any sense. I did a whole review on that film recently, and yeah, no, the least of Madam Web's problems was the fact it starred some women. And had everything to do with the fact that the movie had no coherent plot, any sense of time or character arcs. It was the ultimate slopfest of a movie, but it does still prove that when it comes to superhero related stuff anyway, that yes, that industry is dwindling somewhat. But I do wager it's not cause of superhero fatigue, but bad movie fatigue instead. Like I said plenty of times, if there truly was fatigue, then stuff like Amazon's The Boys or Invincible would be doing terribly, but they aren't. And the same could be said about shows that revolve around concepts like crime and action. Because you have stuff like Law & Order SVU that still gets plenty of views, and there's already a ton of shows out there starring people solving crimes and shooting bad guys. Just look at all the CSI and Law & Order spin-offs or NCIS and more. By the same example then, Reacher or Jack Ryan should have bombed too, but they didn't. You could say there is a crime show drama fatigue due to how many there are, but it's simply not the case. Reacher, as well as other shows I've said, prove that there is only a bad content fatigue, and audiences are becoming more and more resistant to the machinations of these big media giants. Take for example Disney, which has been on fire now for basically a full year and then some, and not in a good way, mind you. There's this entertainment journalist out there named Matt Bellani. He also does a newsletter for subscribers. Anyway, he recently stated that an unnamed Disney executive reached out to him in order to get their thoughts out there without their identity being known. So what does this random executive on Disney's board of directors think about audiences? According to the newsletter, and I quote, "Everyone says it's the movie stupid, which is an easy thing for people to say. More appealing movies are a great way to jump the political issues. But more and more, our audience, or the segment of the audience that has been politicized, equate the perceived messaging in a film as a quality issue. They won't say they find female empowerment distasteful in the Marvels or Star Wars, but they will say they don't like those movies because they are bad. So make better movies becomes code for make movies that conform to regressive gender stereotypes or put men front and center in the narrative. Which is what you're seeing now and what Bob Iger's pivot is about right now." End quote. So this random executive who smartly hid their identity says it's not studios' faults that audiences are not responding to the woke feminist agenda and man-hating narratives. But instead it's that the audience at large is inherently racist themselves and are unwilling to conform to these new ideas these studios like Disney are pushing. But we all know that's bullshit, because there's no way every single person who didn't see the Marvels in theaters or Madam Web is somehow a raging racist, or that is somehow the reason for those films flopping in the first place. As for audiences wanting a return to form when it comes to media like Reacher and so on, well, yeah, duh. Like I said earlier in the video, Reacher being what it is isn't exactly a trend or whatever they want to label it as. It's like saying working out is a trend or eating right is. These are just fundamental things that resonate and make sense with the human soul. People, regardless of religion, politics, or opinion, they resonate when a man is showcased in a strong position of power. Because not only does it just make sense, but it's real and it's true. These feminist weirdos like at the Mary Sue or Disney can complain all they want, but the truth is that a lot of the world's systems are upheld by the legions of men out there. Whether it's food delivery to your grocery stores, electricity, maintenance, infrastructure, construction, the list goes on. These are the core fundamental things that keep our society going. And they are, whether you want to admit it or not, are predominantly fulfilled due to the work and sacrifice of millions of men out there. And there's a reason why seeing a strong male character resonates with people, because many of us out there have seen or witnessed a strong male figure to some capacity in our lives. Whether it's your father, an uncle, a coach, teacher, whatever, the fact is that strong positive masculine energy does nothing but good for society and the people within it. So when I say that going out of your way to eliminate or state that positive male representation is somehow a bad thing proves how backwards and out of touch these people are. It makes sense why Silk Spider Society is being geared towards a male audience. Because we can sit here and pretend all we want that there's enough female comic book fans to keep that show alive. But we know the truth is that the amount of men out there who genuinely engage with and support superhero related content eclipses the female demographic. That's not sexist to say, okay? That's the truth. It's the same if Sephora decided to make mascara for straight men. That product would bomb. Which is why they don't do it and just cater to the people who actually buy their products. Which is of course women mostly, gay men too, but again I would wager the amount of sales for makeup from women as a whole far out eclipses that of gay men, so you get what I mean. The problem these days is that a lot of these executives and companies are attempting to shift the roles and mantras of the two genders to fit what they don't necessarily fit into. And it's clearly not working, and whenever traditional roles are adhered to and respected, those things skyrocket in popularity and revenue. Because no matter what social mind conditioning these companies attempt to do, the truth is that it will never work. Because you can't change the human condition or biology of what makes us tick, there's just certain things that are just core to humans. And seeing strong men leading others is just something no blue-haired feminist is ever going to be able to change because it's impossible. And we're seeing the effects in real time as many female-led projects in male-dominated spaces are falling apart at the seams, and I think it's glorious. I truly hope that Silk Spider Society is but a beginning of more companies realizing that this moronic push they've been trying for years now is simply just never going to work. People just want traditional good content, whether it's Reacher or hell, even video games like Tekken 8. That game has no nonsense in it, it's just a fun game with loads of content, and surprise, it sold 2 million units already. You want to know how that happens? By simply respecting your customers and giving them what they want instead of what you think they should want. Ultimately, it's gratifying to see that the winds are changing and at least some companies are starting to come to the realization that a return to traditional male characters is a much more profitable and true way to make entertainment than what is currently being done. If Amazon wants to continue their dominating streak with future projects, they would adhere to the winning formula of Reacher at all costs. As for Disney, it seems like nothing short of some form of bankruptcy will stop their nonsense, and I say just continue to avoid their content as long as they keep this up. And if Sony were smart, they would put Sydney Sweeney in a Black Cat outfit and put her in Spider-Man 4. Because if I know anything, it's that if there's anything men do want to see, it's Sydney Sweeney in a skin-tight black suit. If they're smart, they'll consider it. And another tip for Sony while I'm at it is to make the Spider-Man games more male-focused as well. And reject all the propaganda within it too, because they are seeing in real time turning Spider-Man into a girl's brand will lead to nothing but misfires like Madam Web in the future. And the pandering in Insomniac's latest Spider-Man game does not bode well either. Just a thought, Sony. If you like money, you should probably course correct as well, sooner rather than later. And before I leave you alone, let's also look at this article which has additional information on Madam Web's fallout, and how Sony is learning the very hard way why turning a boy brand into a girl one is a terrible idea. According to the report, Madam Web marked one of the lowest starts in Hollywood history for a film based on a Marvel character. That's hilariously bad considering this is being put up against nonsense like the early 2000s Elektra and more. So that tells you how badly this is doing. According to one source in the article, the current mood at Sony is very gloomy when it comes to Madam Web. And unsurprisingly, the entire Sony Marvel Spider-Man universe now hinges on the success of Kraven the Hunter and Venom 3, which both release at some point this year. I would wager both of these movies will do infinitely better than Madam Web. However, I'm not sure if Kraven will become a franchise or anything. Venom is a surefire win. I mean, the last two reviewed pretty horribly, but clearly nobody cared because it's Venom. And they both made boatloads of money anyway. Kraven, however, is the wild card here. But it's interesting to realize that if these movies underperform, it could be over for Sony Marvel's universe. And my final question to you with this topic is, well, is that even a bad thing? Realistically, all fans ever wanted was a Spider-Man 4 starring Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi directing it. Hell, I would love an Amazing Spider-Man 3 at this point with Andrew Garfield again. I think what people want more than anything from Spider-Man is, if you can believe it, more Spider-Man. I know it's crazy, but it's true. Just based on No Way Home's reception, it's clear that fans are eager to see their competent, strong male heroes again. And if the state of things like Reacher, for example, proves anything, it's that absolutely nobody wants to see more woke characters, or having male-dominated brands being transformed for an audience that hates that sort of stuff anyway. Kraven might be a strong male character movie, I hope so anyway. Venom will be goofy and it'll make money regardless, I think. But it's clear that these studios need to start dipping their toes back into the well of competent male leads, because it's clear that when you do that, all the money and fame comes along with it. But as far as things go, that's where we're at. Reacher is still killing it, Silk has been purged of feminist nonsense, Disney executives are still blaming fans somehow, and Madam Web is bombing worse than the Marvels. How much more do these people need to happen before they learn? As always, let me know what you think, and if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it as well. Thanks to my patrons, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.